Every company has difference makers, the people who go above and beyond what's required. This podcast is dedicated to the people who challenge the status quo and make good companies great. Today, we're sharing one story from one company in our effort to inspire others. Welcome to Difference Makers. Today, my guest is Bard Conn, EVP of Retail Lending Atlantic for CrossCountry Mortgage. Bard's been in the mortgage industry for over 30 years and in various states in leadership positions. He's worked at a number of large lenders around the country and within the industry. He's a very interesting guy, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get to know him a bit. So, Bard, tell me a little bit about you from kind of early years. You know, I know you didn't dream of being a mortgage guy when you were a little boy. So tell me how that happened.
You know, when I got out of Boston University, my resume consisted of bartending, playing hockey, and fraternizing with the co-eds. So it's a pretty thin resume, and a degree in economics isn't exactly in high demand. So I just called my dad and I said, hey, you know, he was a management consultant. I said, hey, can you hook me up with some job at, you know, one of your clients? And he said, call this person. She's the head of HR of, you know, it was Provident Institution for Savings at the time. And I called her and she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do investment banking because I knew those guys made it a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so she laughs at me. She goes, Bard, that's all done out of Wall Street. We don't do investment banking. But she said, we have openings in mortgage banking. And I thought to myself, mortgage banking, investment banking, the chicks won't know the difference. So that's why I got into mortgage banking. A great career decision based on what women might think of what I did for a living. But, you know, I was a shallow 22-year-old. So it kind of showed you where my thought process was. I knew I wanted to make a lot of money because I hadn't grown up with a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I did that internship, and I did that from January to May when I graduated. And I was there one night toward the end of my internship, and two loan officers were adding up their commissions. And one of them, you know, yelled over his cubicle, you know, they were both named Mike. You know, one Mike yells over, what'd you make? And the guy goes $25,000 for the month. And the other guy goes, beat you, I made $26,000. You know, it's 1986. That was a lot of money to a kid that had never made a lot of money. And I looked at those guys and I said, I don't know what they're doing, but I think I can do that based on, you know, what I know about them. And I had my exit interview the next week, and, you know, they said, would you like to stay on? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, you had to process loans first. And so my first salary in my adult life was $18,600.
Was that at the bank at Shawmut?
That was at Provident, Provident Institution for Savings, which became Connecticut National, which became Shawmut.
So how did you get into origination, being a loan officer?
I liked that those guys were making a lot of money, and, you know, the refi boom was going because, you know, we were coming down after what Volcker had done to kill inflation. And so, you know, I was writing loans when fixed rates were in the low teens, like 13. I remember when they got below 10%, I thought that's an incredibly good rate. Anything in the nines was a good rate to me. So when I hear these, you know, the kids, as I like to call them today, complain about, you know, 30-year fixed rates being at 6.5, I kind of chuckled to myself. Now, granted, we were selling money in the teens, but that was coming down from the 18s. So, and then housing was much more affordable back then. You know, you get a decent, you know, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath Cape in a decent neighborhood for $80,000 back then. So things were way more affordable. So the higher interest rates weren't as impactful as they are.
That was like
today.
early 80s, right?
Early 80s, yeah.
You get into origination, you work for a couple of banks, and then you ended up at Countrywide, which to me, there's no greater experience than people that come from Countrywide. Man, those are true. To me, those are the true. When I see that on a resume or see that in somebody's background, I get excited because Countrywide was a hell of a company.
You know, it was. Until this recent, you know, 2020 and 2021, I would tell people that I worked for the best mortgage banking company at the best time in mortgage banking history because it was a really glorious kind of time. And, you know, when I was at the banks, I kind of learned a lot about recruiting. And then I got to Countrywide, and, you know, they gave me a bunch of branches. So I had kind of a base to work off of. to build on top of, to recruit to. And, they basically, said, here's a dump truck full of money and our model. And if you give me a dump truck full of money and a really good model, and they had a great model at the time, I can build shit. And, I did. I think I hired 96 LOs my first year.
Wow. So then you go to Bank of America. Actually, they bought Countrywide, right? So
They
sort of
saved
by,
me. Yeah, they saved me.
yeah. So you didn't really make a move. You just were acquired, and then MetLife, and then Guaranteed Rate. And you had a really good run there at Guaranteed Rate for 5 years, and you've been at CrossCountry now for 6 years, correct?
Yeah, it'll be 6 next May 15th.
I have a ton of respect for Ron, ton of respect for the cross-country team. One of the things that struck me about you is, I talk to some people in my business, obviously, people that are the quote unquote hiring manager. And when I bring them someone that I think is of high caliber, high quality, my biggest frustration in what I do is that person drops the ball, or that person doesn't connect with people, or that person, doesn't know how to keep getting first downs, because, you lose momentum, then it sort of fades away, and then nobody really follows up. And then it just, again, falls away. And next thing you know, you're punting. But the thing I noticed about you is you connect so good to people. Where do you think that comes from? How is it that you connect so well to people?
I don't sell, first of all. I just kind of present the company. And to me, this is about getting them to a better place, Jim. In other words, and I say this sometime, and I always have to preface it by saying, look, I this may sound like I'm a real jerk, but I don't need $100 million so badly that I would lie to you and ruin my reputation. I try to be a moral and ethical person.
Yeah.
And so, and that comes with years of experience. The decisions I made hiring when I was younger are certainly different probably than the ones I make today. I have a no asshole policy. I don't care how much volume somebody writes, and I don't want to work with bad people who kind of treat processors or underwriters or anybody else for that matter poorly. And I tell people that, and I think that resonates with them because they don't want to work with jerks. And I am probably the least technical recruiter you'll ever find, Jim. Mm-hmm. And I'm honest with people and say, look, I haven't written a loan since Bill Clinton was president. And so my skill set as it relates to understanding the in-depth of product, as opposed to just kind of, they say, the cursory, stuff that I can remember from my career, it's gone. If you're not writing loans, there's a lot of things. I've never put a loan in the system here. You could offer me $1 million to do it, and I'd get it done because I'd have somebody else do it. But I couldn't do it on a personal level. So I tell people that because you got to be honest with people when you recruit them. I also tell people that, like, I'm not going to hide the ball. I'll tell you right out of the gate, if I don't think that you're a model match, I'm not going to sell you. I'm going to present it and tell you everything you want. I'm going to tell you everything about the company. I'm going to make anybody available that you want to speak with. I will fly you to Cleveland if you want, but no one comes here and leaves because, I misled them. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of companies that do that. There are a lot of companies that show a honeymoon price, and then they slowly, after you sign on the dotted line and you bring your team over, they slowly turn up the screws behind the scenes. And that was one of the things with Ron that we really appreciated. Everybody else that we spoke to in the P&L model space wouldn't tell us what the corporate margins were. Mm-hmm. And Ron said that this is the highest they'll ever be. They'll be under these amounts, but they'll never be over these amounts. And if they do, get in a plane, come out here and beat the crap out of me. And as you know, the chances of anybody beating the crap out of Ron are pretty slim.
Yeah.
And the only time he ever violated that, and I called him on it too, because I get raw price, quarterly or something, just to make sure we see where we're at. It was early in the pandemic when no one knew what was going on, and I got raw price, and I saw that there was a discrepancy between the number that he said he would never go above in the conventional loan and what was in it. And so I called Rick Fidel, I think you know Rick, and I said, he's hitting the price pretty hard. And Rick, great partner, says, you'll figure it out. So I called him up and I just said, hey, I know you're stomping on price. And he got a little defensive, which I don't blame him for. There's a lot of stress in the business at that time. No one knew what was going on. He just said, yeah, Bard, I've had, 3 margin calls in the last 6 weeks. No one knows what's going on with the Barons. I just need some time to figure things out. And I said, look, I can't handle the volume anyway. It's not about that. Just promise me you'll put him back to levels that you said you would not exceed. And he said, absolutely, of course. And that was the last time I've ever seen the price where it was. And it wasn't horrific. It was like 50 basis points more. And I couldn't handle the volume anyway. And, and I said, hey, can I have some of those basis points for all the float downs that we're going to get? He just laughed at me. Like, yeah, no, margin calls. I said, okay.
I remember that time. There were a lot of companies that were getting punched pretty hard with those margin calls at the time. But do you have advice for somebody? I mean, you've got a lot of experience. You've seen a lot of different platforms. You've seen people come and go. What advice would you give to somebody who's maybe breaking into the industry or having a difficult time right now? Maybe they got in when it was great the last couple of years, and now they're going, where the hell are the loans? What advice do you give somebody in that situation?
I get that a lot. My advice, it's twofold. My advice to the branch managers are that these people have bills to pay. You may do loans on the margin. That's a win for the company because the company gets paid. Your LO gets paid. Maybe you put a couple basis points in the P&L, and that's not a long-term strategy, but it does keep people able to pay their bills and remain competitive. And to the LOs, I say, look, it's a grind. And, this is when everybody else is in the fetal position, not going out because there's no loans out there type of thing. And that's when you got to go out and work twice as hard, because that's when the slackers are not out selling. The good ones are, the big hitters are out selling all the time. And you got to get out and you got to get up every day and treat it like a job. And the vast percentage of LOs in the market, I think, don't really treat it like a 9-to-5 job. They get up late, they go into the office late. They think they're going to go on the road and sell money, and they have a couple problems with some loans, and then it's 2:00. Oh, the traffic's going to be terrible. I'll go tomorrow. And so they never break out of that $20 to $30 million range. But if you treated this like an accountant treats their job, you got up every day, you went in and you worked from 9 to 5 doing your selling and doing sales activity and business creation, you'll be a $50-100 million producer. Like if you talk to Champ Ocean, he's up early, he's selling all the time. He embraces the technology, he embraces things, and then he executes. And that guy still runs as fast as as ever, right? He's not slowing down. And he's a brutal competitor. He's a college football player. There's a reason he's the number 1 guy in the country. And it's not because he has a big team, because that's kind of what you hear from a lot of people. It's because he grew his business to need a big team.
Right. Having a big team in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful. I mean, if you don't have the loans to feed the team, you don't have the team. Winners win. I always say that I have this hashtag I use in a lot of my posts. It's hashtag winners win. And I got that from a motivational speaker I saw, Eric Thomas, online. And he said, I don't even really know how to explain it, but this is as simply as I can say it. Winners win and losers lose. I don't know how it happens, but that's just life. Winners win, and they find a way to win. And obstacles don't slow them down. They go over them, around them, under them, whatever it takes. And in this current market, you're right. You've got to get out there and you got to redouble your efforts. And maybe you have to work at a bit of a break even, but those are seeds you're planting for the harvest, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I look at financial decisions that I'm asked to make or counsel on, it starts with what's in the best interest of the company, what's in the best interest of the LO, then what's in the best interest of the branch, then what's in the best interest of me. You got to do the right thing by the company, the LO, the BM, and then whatever's left over, you can participate in. But take care of the company and the people, because if something bad happens to the company, if something bad happens to your LOs and they have to move over to another company to take a sign-on bonus, because you wouldn't give them a pricing exception because you were trying to make X amount of basis points in a loan. That's a bad financial decision.
That sounds a lot like leadership to me. Views on leadership. What do you think it takes to be a good leader? Obviously, I can gather you believe in selflessness. And what's your leadership style, and how has it evolved over the years?
It's a really hands-off, especially here. It's pretty hands-off. Most of what I do now is mentoring, because we have someone that runs operations for us. I'm an asset allocator, first of all. We also, when I hire people, I talk about, the fact that we hire adult mortgage bankers. In other words, I'm not, I don't want people that I have to tell to go sell money. And a good example of that was, at a former company, his name I won't say, 20% of the people in the company were on a low producer report. I mean, who hired these people? Like who hired people who didn't underwrite the candidate? I don't understand that kind of, that thought process. And a lot of it had to do with, there's a tense amount of pressure to hire people, just hire. And Ron's never put any pressure on us to hire anybody here. He's never said one thing to me about anything to do, with how much recruiting or how much hiring I'm doing. Never. And not having that, he basically said to us, look, I want to, we said, how big do you want to be? He said, I just want to grow with good people. And that was exactly what we needed to hear, because I want to grow with good people too. I don't want to hire just masses of asses. And so we hired people that are smart, know they need to sell money. And the best kind of example I can give of, this kind of hands-off management style is we went to all our branches, and I think we have 37 at this point. And we said, do you guys want to do a divisional call every 2 weeks? And they said, it was universal. No, we don't. We want to just be left alone to run our businesses. And, we need you, we'll call you. If our LOs need anything, they can reach right out to you directly, and they do. But, it's just, my management style is like, give good advice. Know what the other thing is, this is 37 years, I think, for me in the business. You've come across a lot of stuff after 37 years. And so you've seen a lot of different scenarios. And so it's pretty easy to figure things out when someone comes to you with a problem. So it's hands off. I never liked being overmanaged. I didn't like people telling me to do call reports and things like that. I just found it, I don't think it doesn't work for a lot of people. And we hire people that know it's their job to go do these things. And all they really want are resources to achieve their goals. And, we underwrite our candidates really tightly in our group.
They're adults, like you said. They don't sell, they don't eat, period.
Right.
So get out there, and it's just how bad do you want it? How bad do you want?
Yeah, and if someone said, hey, I want to, I have a peer in another company, Movement, and he's got a guy that he's a high touch guy, and he calls him every morning and every night. And if someone asked me to do that, I would certainly do it. My tendency would not to be someone who was that, I don't say needy is the right word, but who needed that much kind of affirmation of what they were doing was the right path. But again, those are decisions based on individual managers, takes on things, and that's just my take.
I don't think I could survive in that environment myself.
But that guy, he loves mortgage banking. It's all he wants to talk about. And we were countrywide together, and there were times you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to sit next to him, because all we're going to talk about is mortgages, and I just want to talk about sports or family or something other than mortgages. But I get his passion for it.
Difference Makers is powered by Verity Search. In today's competitive war for talent, they understand recruiting requires having a strong sales and marketing approach. Recruiting is not posting jobs online and waiting for unqualified people to apply. It's active, it's engaging, and it's working with people while maintaining extreme confidentiality. Their solutions and techniques are innovative and brave, but based on industry knowledge and key identification strategies. Some of the key services include strategy planning, research, marketing, prospect identification, qualification, and recruitment across all markets and geographies. If you'd like more information, please check out the website at veritysearch.com. Congratulations on all your success. You've been wildly successful. I know Ron thinks the world of you. He and I have had conversations about you, and so congrats on all of that. More than that, I think what impressed me about you is that, our conversations have gone beyond business. I've gotten to know you a little bit as a person, and you just mentioned, hey, I'd like to talk about sports and other things. So let's go there. I think these are some of the things that I found interesting about you is that, you like to do a lot of other things. I know you're married. You have a daughter that's going off to school in the fall.
17 years.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But we talked about other passions and living life, right? Because you got to look. Franco Harris passed this morning. I mean, 72. Reds pitcher 62 died yesterday. It's like you kind of look at it, and it's like it's not all about. It's not. I mean, a certain amount of money, and you're comfortable, but you only get one shot at this thing called life. And for me, my buddy Chip, he impressed this upon me about, I don't know, 10 years ago. He said, man, for me, it's all about making memories. We got to make as many as we can because, we don't know what tomorrow brings. And I think you have that appreciation. I think you have that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's easier to have that perspective as you get older and you accumulate some wealth, and you're not worried about paying your mortgage or that there does free you up. But I know for sure that I won't lie on my deathbed and wonder what happens on Wednesday the 22nd of December 2022, other than our conversation. It's work. Work's really important. It's how we pay our bills, but you should also take time to do those experiences. Fish in Alaska if you like to fish, which I do. Go climb mountains if you like to climb mountains. Spend time with your family. You lose some people get lost in business and it becomes their identity. And I knew I didn't want to do that, and so I've had a lot of experiences and done a lot of things that I don't have a bucket list anymore. I kind of checked off all the boxes.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That list is supposed to never be filled. You're supposed to keep adding.
But you know what? I don't want to skydive, man. It scares the living daylights out of me.
Or you scratched that one off? That was on there at one time?
No, I'm not. That was never on the list. I am not jumping out of a perfectly good airplane unless it's going down and I have a chute. No, I've done the things I wanted to do. Yeah, like I'm going to go peacock bass fishing with my brother in Brazil for my 60th.
That sounds fun.
Because I've always wanted to do that one, but that one's, we got that one's in the works right now. So, that's probably it.
Tell me about your trip to Alaska and let everyone else hear this story. You shared it with me, but we didn't have a lot of time together. So you fly into this lodge, right? And then everywhere you want to go fish the next day, you have to actually fly there as well?
Yeah, you fly out in a 1954 de Havilland Beaver.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they're really expensive. Like they're like $750,000. I don't know what they cost when they were new, but sure as heck wasn't $750,000, even if you adjust for inflation, because there's such a workhorse of Alaska. So you fly out, depending on what you want to fish that day. So if you want to fish silver salmon, king salmon, char, grayling, and you tend to focus on whatever's running that time that you're there. So the last time we were there, it was rainbows. And so we caught a lot of giant rainbows. But we also did pike. Whatever you want to fish, they'll go do it. My decisions are usually based on where the least amount of bears are. So that's my thing, is I don't like being that close to the
So what
bears.
kind of bears are in Alaska?
Grizzly bears, brown bears. And so although moose kill more people in Alaska every year than bears do.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the guides are like, they're just like big raccoons, Bart. Don't even pay attention to them. Just don't run. Slowly back away if you encounter one. If you've got a fish on, cut the line, let it have the fish. You'll catch another one. But the ones that worry me the worst are sows with cubs, because they will kill you. One of the other parties ran into a bear and three cubs, and even the guide said I was I was not feeling too good about that situation. And all he had was mace. He didn't have a gun.
It's a bear spray, right? It like blinds
Yeah,
them.
he had bear spray, which they tell you is more effective than a gun. And my brothers know the guys, that run the lodge. And I'm like, ask him if I can bring a firearm and a pistol. And they're like, absolutely not. He'll freak out. He'll shoot a bear and it'll kill all of us. so they wouldn't let me carry a gun. But the guy did carry a shotgun when I was with him.
I would push back on the big raccoon thing. I did a podcast with the former CEO of Interlink Mortgage out of Houston, Jim Van Steenhouse, and he's now known as the Bear Man. He actually has a ministry called the Bear Man Ministries, and if you get time, check it out on YouTube. It's a harrowing story of how he was attacked by a grizzly and left for dead. And laying there, the bear dragged him down the hill 100 yards and looked up, and all his fingers were going the wrong way, and his head was a blood sprinkler, and he thought it was raining. It was his own blood. You're smart to stay away from them, because they're not big raccoons, man. That story, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. And he lived to tell the tale, and now he's just leading a ministry, and it's really, really inspiring what he's doing.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad he survived. It's amazing what the human body can take.
Yeah.
It is just amazing. And you see some of these commercials for wounded warriors, and in World War II, those guys would have died, most of them. And the prosthetic devices they have for those guys are phenomenal. So I'm glad he's okay. That is my worst fear, is being eaten alive effectively.
Were you born in Massachusetts?
Yes, I was born in Concord, Massachusetts.
Oh, Concord. Okay.
Yeah. And my mom's from Peterborough, Ontario. And so, like, you grow up in Massachusetts and you're playing hockey, you tend to lean towards that heavy Boston accent. And she just rode that right out of me. So she did not want me to, the Harvard Yard kind of stuff.
You have it a little bit though, man. All my family's from up there. I was born in Waltham. So I'm very familiar with Waltham, Concord, Lexington, that whole area.
Yep. Oh, yep.
Yeah, but I've lost it too. I've been down here since high school in Florida, and they make fun of you enough that you adapt. And a lot of country people down here, so you start to pronounce words.
I mean, I can slip into it if I'm back home with old friends from high school and things like that, and occasionally maybe it shows up. But I'm surprised, but my mom would be disappointed in me.
So mom and dad. Concord, Mass. How did they come up with the name? Your actual name is Barden.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Okay. So my dad's name is Charles Ronald Conn II. My brother's name is Charles Ronald Conn III. And my mom was enough of this waspy name stuff. It's Old Irish. And it means from the wild boar's den, which I don't know how I feel about. And I tell her all the time, why couldn't you just have named me Chris, right? Got a nice ring to it. Could be an actor with a name like that. Instead,
the chicks dig it.
Yeah, the chicks dig it. So what it's like to go through life being called Brad. Like, even when I write my name in an email to someone and they can see me, they still correct it to say Brad, and I'm like, I know how to spell my own name. So you get a lot of Brads, Barts, Berts. Kind of think of some of the other ones I get, but you just get used to it after a while and just go with the flow.
My family's Middle Eastern, so my real given name is Jameel, Jameel. Try going through an airport with that name. Over here, we need to, yeah. So Barden.
Yes.
How did we get to Barden?
Well,
Mom?
Yeah, Mom did that. And
I like it. I honestly like that. I think it's a cool name.
Yeah, I get Brandon a lot. It's funny because my wife's name is Melinda, which everybody ends up calling her Melissa. And so we just refer to ourselves as Brad and Melissa. It's a joke. And the only people that call me Barden is my mom and my wife, and only when they're very upset with me.
Yeah.
We had to really push a button or two to get the Barden from Melinda.
So thankfully, it's not often.
No, knock on wood. She keeps me on the straight and narrow, Jim.
So those are a few of your hobbies. What kind of sports do you like? Do you follow sports?
Yeah, we watch a lot of football.
Hopefully you didn't watch the Patriots game Sunday, because I can't.
That was horrific.
I shut the TV off. I didn't want to see. I didn't watch sports for 4 days. I didn't want to see a highlight.
dumbest. Just take a knee. Take a knee. Go into overtime.
Yeah.
Hope you win a coin toss. But that was ridiculous. It wasn't like they were down by 3 and this was their one shot at winning the game. They could have gone into OT.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, don't get me started. The only good news from that is that Tampa Bay lost and the Detroit Lions won. That made me happy.
I'm finding myself pulling for the Lions, man. I like what's going on over there. Yeah. I like that coach. If you don't like that coach, man, you're crazy. Everyone gotta love Dan Campbell.
You can tell his players like him too, because they play up for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And, it's Detroit is always. When was the last time Detroit had a winning record? I mean, not normally. I follow Detroit, on a tertiary level, just because I always root for them, because it always seems like they're, 3-13.
Yeah. Yeah, lovable losers.
Yeah. So, and I golf a lot. Well, I took last year off because I had some vertebrae damage in my neck from either an old hockey injury or lifting weights. Note to everybody out there: don't do behind the neck barbell curls by yourself in the basement with too much weight. That's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. It might have been that did it. So I'll get back out after. The guys at the club are just relentlessly torturing me.
But you don't get to play a lot up there. It's all very seasonal. You should come down here to Florida, man. All the courses are open 12 months of the year.
Yeah, we used to do Florida trips and things like that. I can't, what it is? I can't take 36 holes a day, 3 days in a row. By the end of it, it's like you're losing, you start to get worse, basically, is what, at least I do. I start to get worse. I play my best in the first 18 is probably the best, and then everything's downhill from there.
Let's go back to business for a few minutes. What do you see happening here now? We're at the end of 2022. It was a tough year by all accounts for everyone, especially considering, volumes have fell off, quite considerably. People were going to sleep and waking up with their pipelines full every day in 2021, 2020. So 2022 is now behind us. I'm hearing lots of optimism. Potentially, the hikes are starting to slow down. What's your prognostication for our next year?
Since I do have an economics degree, and I never get to use it, I'll pull some stuff and dust it off. Look, what needs to happen is that we need unemployment to go up. Unfortunately, they're going to have to put this thing into a coma/recession. The question, and most of the time they overshoot the runway and they put it into a deep recession when they do this kind of stuff. Maybe they can pull it off and get it right. I don't see anything really exciting happening in Q1. Maybe Q2. Look, there's the political, and let's face it, the Fed is not apolitical. There's pressure on the Fed to get this thing over with, and Powell's entire life's work will depend on how he handles this. Everything else he's done will be forgotten if he doesn't pull this thing off correctly. So he wants it done for his legacy. The administration wants it done because they do not want to run in the middle of a recession. So I think that there's a lot of will to get this over, put it into a recession and reflate out of it. This question is, can they make it happen? And, they've done this a long time. This is the worst and longest downtime I've ever seen. I've seen 6 months, I've seen 9 months, but then boom, they flip a switch, they drop rates, and we go screaming on to refinance everybody we wrote in the previous 5 years. Prices need to come down. Affordability needs to be something that factors into it. We're starting to see price cuts in Zillow.
Why does unemployment need to go up?
When everybody's employed, they're still out buying stuff, right? And so there's competition for goods. And so when there are endless consumers willing to buy the flat screen TV at $1,500 a whack, there's no incentive to drop the price to $1,300. So you need unemployment because that gets people's attention. Frankly, it removes more consumers from the marketplace, drops demand, and that lightens up on prices. I mean, try finding a used car, one that's actually reasonable. It's cheaper to buy a brand new car when you look at, hey, I can get a 3-year-old car for, $20,000. I can get a brand new low end Toyota for $22,000. You might as well get the Toyota, right? Yeah, that's why unemployment's got to go up, because that's part of the economy slowing down. Is the economy, people, and it's already started. Goldman Sachs announced 8,000 people were being laid off last week. It's starting to happen, and it's sad. I don't want it to, but there's no other way to kill this thing.
Is that something that you think Trump would have had to do at some point in the previous administration, or?
I don't know. I mean, the Biden administration spent a crazy amount of money. Trump did too. I'm certainly not defending him in that front, but the circumstances under which he was spending the money are a lot different than the circumstances under which the Biden administration spent the money. That was funding for a lot of pet projects, and the money hasn't been spent yet. I mean, there are billions and hundreds of billions of dollars that are being, being sat on effectively. We've been getting killed by the small local banks lately. And I talked to a friend who owns a small mortgage banking company who deals with them and those type of banks, because, he won't flood them with too much volume. And he asked one of the executives, like, how are you guys where's all this money coming from? And he said, it's PPE money. People just put it in the bank and we've got to lend it out. So that's why we have this big pot of money to keep going and staying, super competitive and undercutting the market in this environment. So those things need to come back into balance, to get the mortgage industry kind of in a better place, in my opinion. And look, I don't hold a PhD in economics, so I'm certainly not going to hold myself up as some economist, but I did study it a million years ago.
That's interesting. I never really understood those levers, or why this one has to go this way or that one has to go that way to cause the effect that we want, No, man, I appreciate you being on. It's awesome. It's a great opportunity for people to kind of get to know you and as a person more than just, hey, come work for me. Or that's kind of what I like to do, is I like to talk to people that can make a difference for other people. And you do that. I mean, everybody that you've ever connected with, that I've connected you with, has come away saying, that guy's awesome. I would work for that guy in a heartbeat, So
that's the highest compliment I could be paid, frankly, I'm a good guy.
It's that selfless leadership, and it's appreciated. Pay it forward, and somebody will see this and maybe pick up a few things from your style and all of your experience. So,
or call me. Call me.
Call Bard Conn. All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Merry Christmas. If I don't talk to you before then, but I'm sure I will.
All right.
You have a great one. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Jim.